Ever wonder why more money doesn't make you feel safer? That's what we're going to talk about today. And I want to start with, have you noticed that enough money or enoughness, like that goalpost keeps moving, right? You've saved and you've done everything responsible and you hit a savings goal, right? And then the goalpost moves again. You don't get that feeling of enoughness, or your investments are growing, or you get a bonus, right? Or something shifts upward financially, but you're back at square one. You're back at that feeling of feeling like enough and feeling like you don't have enough, or you're never not enough, right? And somehow the feeling doesn't shift even though your money does. And we have this belief that when there's more, we'll relax. But that goalpost of enoughness and being able to relax or exhale actually never happens. And it's so frustrating. I've become fascinated by this because I've had so many women that I've worked with that are incredibly successful, and they've done everything right financially and been completely responsible. And still there's this question of, will I be okay? That seems to be at the core of everything. And that feeling, just think about that for a second of, will I be okay? One of the things is that we assume money creates safety. And of course we believe that because that's what we were taught, but it actually doesn't. And the saving more, the accumulating more, the having more, the chasing more, the constant seeking of more doesn't actually make us feel secure. What if what we've been taught isn't actually how certainty, safety, and security works? What if we start questioning that? That would be one of the things that I would ask you to take a look at. Because if more money created safety, then even the wealthiest people wouldn't still have chronic financial fear and worry. I met women with 8-figure balances who were terrified to make their next move or make the next biggest decision that life was handing them. I've worked with women who had moderate means that slept peacefully at night. I think that should make us curious. That should make us wonder about this fallacy, this idea that we've been taught that more money equals safety. And one of the things I want you to know is that I don't believe that anymore. What I believe is that financial certainty isn't a number. It's the ability to trust ourselves with life's next biggest decisions without falling apart or collapsing financially. And here's what's really fun about this. I actually don't think we're searching for a number. I think we're actually looking for permission, because the cost of deferring our lives to experts, to colleagues, to mentors, to coaches, to friends, to our family, to our spouses or our partners has cost us too much, which is why we're at this crossroads of, why can't I trust myself with a big decision or my next move without feeling like I'm going to financially fall apart? The truth is that we've been wanting permission to leave. We've been wanting permission to change. We've been wanting permission to travel. The biggest one, we've been wanting permission to want what we want, right? We've been wanting permission to slow down, to actually live the life that we were born to live. To me, this is the most important thing we could ever spend our times doing. And somewhere along the line, we thought that more money was the thing that would grant us permission, that would set us free. And it ends up not being that. Money was never good at answering emotional questions. It's good at answering mathematical ones, but it's not good at answering existential ones, which is why there's been this big gap in our understanding and our ability to have right relationship with money, wealth, and prosperity, why it doesn't feel aligned with feminine energy, and why the financial systems actually weren't designed for us. And I will talk to you more about that in another video. Personal story for you. When I left corporate, everybody thought I was crazy. They're like, what are you going to be bored? What are you going to do? I was 47. Like, life had just kind of started. I had all the accolades. And I had generated over $100 million in sales. I was making huge commissions every quarter. And in fact, I was turning those commissions into investments because I wanted to fund the life I really wanted to live. But at the end of the day, the money, the earning my way out, the plan, the spreadsheets, that wasn't the issue. That actually wasn't the hard part. The hard part came later, which was that time period of grieving that ecosystem and that environment, because it had become so habitual, so instinctual, although it wasn't what I wanted, right? But I had to learn how to live without the paycheck, without the validation, without being attached to colleagues' feedback, without feeling great about myself because clients bought another deal, right? This attachment to being valued. I had to learn how to find another way with that, how to live another way without that. And what became really interesting to me was that we're programmed to think that's a money problem, but it's actually a relationship problem. It's a relationship with self problem, which is why we're going to dive into this over the course of a lot of videos, because this is a deep psycho-spiritual identity shift that we must make, because we have to let go of the attachments to paychecks, the attachments to being validated by these particular styles of ecosystems. Whether you work for yourself, you're a coach, you're an entrepreneur, you're in corporate, or you're a partner and that situation is changing, or you've recently lost someone and you either have no finances or you have a ton of finances, right? This goes so many different ways, but all of us women have the same question: will I be okay? And I'm afraid I'm going to outlive my money, and if I make the next big move, I'm going to actually create financial disaster. Let's take a breath. Yeah, that one hits home, doesn't it? Looking back on my corporate experience, I realized that I was being driven to build more wealth. Well, what I really wanted was to know how to fund the life that I really wanted to live. I was funding my freedom. That's what was really driving me underneath it all. But the programming had me thinking I was chasing wealth. And so that's what I want to shift is your thinking here. This is why I say, and I'll say it repeatedly, is that financial certainty isn't actually a number. It's about a relationship with yourself. The number matters. The financial stewardship matters. The generating as much income as you can matters. But what matters more is how much you keep, and how much of what you keep funds the life that you really want. Because it matters to have income and inflow. That cash flow does matter. And I'm never going to tell you that they don't. But here's the thing. They're not the destination. Freedom, choice, living as you choose, living the way that matters to you is the destination. And that requires a deep level of self-trust with yourself and your money. Like, we have to have this positive relationship with our money, not just money, but our money, right? And money doesn't create freedom. It funds it. I've started asking my clients a completely different question, because this isn't about retirement planning at all. And I'm not a fiduciary, I'm not a financial planner, and I'm not a retirement planner, and I don't want to be any of those, right? That it isn't about how much do you need. This is about what's the life you want to fund. That's the question I want you to start asking yourself, because it's a shift in thinking of stop saving for retirement and start planning and creating your freedom. That's what I did when I was in corporate. I didn't know it at the time, but that's what I did, is I wanted to fund my freedom. And so it starts to shift everything. It actually gets exciting instead of this heavy, dreary retirement planning thing, right? We've read all those books. We've heard all those things. We've been with all those people. We both know we nod off in our accountant calls or our meetings with our financial people. And listen, I love them. They're great. I have my own fiduciary, and he's a very close personal friend of mine. I love the work that he has done. He helped my late husband and I triple our money, and I wouldn't change it for a thing. But at the end of the day, I still needed to know that I deserved to have the money that I had, that I could be trusted with the money that I had. And so here's the thing. If this conversation stirred something in you, that idea of wow, I can actually stop saving for retirement, which feels like drudgery, and start funding the life I really want to have and use my money to have freedom. That's something I want to do. That's a path I want to go down. I've actually created something for you. It's called the Financial Certainty Finder. What it is a guided experience that you can do on your own time. And you can get in 5 minutes, you can find out what your next step is. You can feel better about your situation and actually look at your financial life through a completely different lens that's fueled by all of my philosophies and my decades long. I've been studying money since I was 6 years old. So that's 64 years built into this experience that you can have. It's private, it's confidential, it's all on your own. And so if you'll go to knowyourookay.com, Know You're Okay, spelled out OK or OKAY.com. Do that right now. Go ahead and drop in your email address, and immediately you're going to get this tool that you can use and you're going to fall in love with. So I want to leave you with one question, because if another $1 million isn't going to answer the will I be okay question, then maybe it's time to ask yourself, what life do I truly want to fund? And until next time, I want you to trust yourself with your money.